And we're live. Hey everyone, Xanaris here. So for today's demo, and if just get like one person in the chat to say that they can hear me. All right. So for today's demo, I built a very simple backend using Hot Chocolate and Entity Framework Core. So I won't be covering either of those in today's talk. Michael covered Hot Chocolate for GraphQL, the backend, on Tuesday, and Patrick covered Entity Framework Core this morning. So for our backend, we have a single query to get our users and two mutations to set toggle users active status or to toggle users admin status. So a typical use case for Blazor WebAssembly is for internal tools within organizations. So I want to try and replicate that today. So we'll run our backend. And take a look at our schema. So we have our query for our users and our two mutations. For the user, if we take a look at the user type, we can see that it has some fields. The ones we'll be interested in today are the user ID, their email address, their active status, and their admin status. And then for the two mutations, they're both pretty similar. They accept a user ID and the Boolean to toggle their status. So heading back into Rider, we'll leave our backend running and go and create a new solution for a Blazor WebAssembly app. And I'm going to put the solution and the project in the same directory just to simplify things for the terminal. Create our new project. And we'll take a look at how this looks out of the box. And we get our Blazor hello world with a counter and a simple weather forecast data fetch. So we're actually going to make use of that fetch data and manipulate it to list our users and pull in those users from our backend using a GraphQL client. So to get things started, we'll just kind of rename things so it makes a little bit more sense. All the weather forecast. Users. We're going to have user ID, email, active status, and whether or not they're an admin. Now for the active status and the admin, I want to actually make these buttons that we can click to toggle their status. So I could build that out in here and then put the logic for it down below. But since Blazor is all about components, we'll create a component for that button. So add a new directory. And we'll add a new Blazor component. Okay. So for our type button class, and these are bootstrap classes, which reason they're populating because the Blazor template comes with bootstrap already set up in the CSS imports. Make a small button. Then we want to take an on-click. We'll need some parameters for this button. We'll need one to control whether or not green button or a red button. So we'll make this a just cool primary to control whether or not. Actually, let's name it. And then number two we're going to need is one that's kind of built into Blazor to accept a render fragment for the child content. And in here we just put child content. So anything that's inside of this demo button component will display inside of here when we use it. And we're also going to need an event callback to accept our onClick. And then in here, we can just set it to the onClick, the callback that's passed to this component. And then the last thing we need is I want this outlined here to be controlled by this Boolean that's passed to the button itself. So let's create a private method style. And here we'll just return active, then on primary success. Okay. Success. And take this out and replace it with our button style method. So if active is set to true, we'll get button outline success. If active is set to false, we'll get button outline danger. We'll go into our imports and add that components folder. Master button. True. True. And we'll do a here. Button active to false. And put false inside of it. Complaining about these, and I'm not sure why. No, it's not complaining about them. Okay. Run that. And we have our true and false buttons inside of our table. Okay. So the next thing we'll do is we're going to start setting up Strawberry Shake as our GraphQL client. So to do that, I'm just going to take a look at the Strawberry Shake documentation and just go through the steps in here. So first step for the Strawberry Shake CLI tools, to create a new tool manifest. So we'll copy that, head to our terminal, tool manifest. Next, install the Strawberry Shake tools. Now I don't have .NET 6 installed, so I'm actually going to have to use a slightly newer preview version of this. All the tools. Step 2, create our project. We've already gone and done that. Step 3, install the required packages. So we'll grab the packages from here. Writer, NuGet packages. Add the first one, Strawberry Shake transport.http. Add that to our project. Do the same with the second one for the C# analyzer for the code generation. Add that to the project. The next two packages are already included with Blazor WebAssembly, but we'll go ahead and do it anyway. And the HTTP extensions. Okay. Next, we're going to go ahead and add the GraphQL client to our project. So this step here takes a look at the GraphQL schema that you're going to be working with, and then sets up the configuration files for the name of the client so that when you build your project, it generates the source file for that client. So I'm going to go ahead and add in. So here I'm passing in the localhost port 7205/GraphQL, and I'm going to call it my admin client. And 7205 is the port where the backend is currently running. So go ahead and add that. Oops. Okay. So what that did was that added our config file here with the URL of the GraphQL schema, and then downloaded the schema itself for my backend into this file here. The next step is optional to set up a namespace. I'm going to skip that. And we create our first query. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new folder just to organize these. It's not mandatory. GraphQL, and add a new GraphQL file. And for this first query, I'm just going to keep it simple and call it get all users. you'll notice right away that we get autocomplete on this. So if I use Control Space, I can hit users to get the type from our schema, tab, and here, Control Space, and then grab the fields that I want. Email, active, and admin. Back to the docs, it says to build it. And then after we build it, we'll be able to add our client to the services. So build our solution. Then you'll notice that there's this generated folder now with the client that it just generated. So head to the entry point and add our admin client to the services. And here, HTTP client. And then this will be our address to our backend. Next up, let's head over to their fetch data that used to be for the weather and start setting this up to collect our users. So I'll rename this from forecast to user. And this forecast to users. And we won't be using the HTTP client anymore. We'll be using our admin. So in our uninitialized async override, so when this page first loads asynchronously, it'll run the code in this block of our result equals wait admin client dot taking our get all users here from the GraphQL query we wrote. Async. And the result of this is a operation result. And for the users themselves, grab it from our result.data, and this might be null. And then our users. And we'll convert this to an array. Look at this type. You'll see that it's an I get all users array. So I'm just going to copy that. Place what's in here for the weather forecast. Remove that. So when the page loads, our GraphQL client will grab the users from the backend and then place them into this array here. So what we'll have to do is in these table cells, place the weather stuff with our user ID, user email, and then here we can plug our user active status. user admin status. And then set these to be string values of those booleans. Go ahead and run that. Fetch data. And we have our users displayed from the backend. Now, these are all generated with Mockaroo, so none of these are real email addresses. Now, so we have all 100 users that are in the database listed here. But say we wanted to write a slightly more interesting query that to grab only a subset of these. So we'll stop that. And then in our GraphQL folder, add another GraphQL file. And for this one, we'll do get users starting with, we'll call it query get users starting with. And we'll take variable, call it prefix, string, that's acquired. And so grab users where and we are going to have one here, and it's fine. First name starts with a prefix. And then we'll grab the same fields as before. Now we'll build the solution, which will update our generated client to make this available to us in our fetch data. So no longer will it be get all users. We're going to go get users starting with async. And you can see here it's expecting a string for the prefix. I'm just going to put in S. Now you'll notice that this is complaining because the payload is a different interface type from what we had here already. So I could update this to the new interface, but I'm actually just going to create a user model and then map the result to that model. So user prop int id prop string email prop bool active prop bool admin. So here we'll add a select and we'll create a new user. ID will be ID email active admin. To array and then change this one to a array. So go ahead and run that again. fetch data. And there's only 5 of them in here. Now these are just their emails, and the emails all start with S, but a good way to make certain that we're actually getting the results we want, let's add the first name to a column here. So we'll go to our get users starting with query, and we'll just add first name field in here. And while we're at it, we'll also add in by name setting. We'll build that. Head to our fetch data. Then we'll add another column in here for the first name. Same in the cell in the row. Add it to our model. First name. And then add it. Fetch data. And we can see that it is in fact users starting with the first name with S as the first character. And you can see that we've sorted it alphabetically since user ID 18 is down here. Okay. So next up, we want to make these buttons actually useful and do something for us. So to do that, we're going to need to write an additional query, or actually this one's going to be a mutation. And we'll call this one set interactive. And this is a mutation. So this is changing data in the back end. And so we'll take a variable, user's ID, and active. Our input is going to be ID, and we also need a variable for what active status we're setting it to. Require it as well. And the active variable. And we want back there active status. Build that. Add it to the generated client. Head over to fetch data. And we'll create a new method in here to handle that. So I have a async method. Ask active. And this is going to take the user ID and the current active status. So our result is going to be wait client to user active async, and this is expecting the user ID and the active status. So we'll plug in the user ID, and the opposite of the current active status. Current active. And so if for some reason it returns null, we'll just break out of this and return is null, or the return. And next thing we'll do is the ID. So we'll grab the first. The ID equals our user ID, and set their active status to what we get back in the results, which is and that for sure is populated, since we're going to be clicking a user in that array. So toggle active, run our mutation to set their active status to the opposite of what it is currently, and then update the user in our list with the new active status. And then on our button, we'll just set that as the on click. Active, that's in the user ID and the user active status. And I'll go ahead and run that. Fetch data, and we'll try toggling one to active. And it works. So we'll set this one to true on the bottom, and then we'll close this out, and then stop it, and rerun it again just to show that it did, in fact, save those changes. And then we'll do the same thing with the admin. So add a new GraphQL file. We wrote for the active, and then just changing to admin. 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 And then we go back admin status. Solution. And then copy our toggle active method and create a toggle admin method. Admin. 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 Set it to the opposite of what they are currently. And then admin here as well. And add the same thing to the other button. Run that. Fetch data, and then check that our admin toggles are working, which they are. And that's it for today's demo. I will link the source code to what was done today in the chat. And I think Brainiac will probably make sure that's on the YouTube link as well. And now I'll take a look at the questions. Okay, so for our first question from Patrick, where do you personally divide the line between REST and GraphQL usefulness? For example, when would you choose to use one versus the other? Well, I think it depends on how your team is structured. If your backend team is completely segregated from your front-end teams, or your front-end consumers are outside of your organization, then GraphQL definitely shows its usefulness because of the power and control the front-end devs have over what data specifically they get back versus REST, which they take what's provided to them or put in a request to have a new endpoint added or that data changed. Second question from Patrick. Do you think Blazor lends itself particularly well to GraphQL over shipping something like Entity Framework to the user? I would never put Entity Framework in a Blazor WebAssembly app simply because you've put your database credentials inside of a client-sided application, and that would be a huge security risk. What is the update experience between .NET versions? For example, what did .NET 6 to .NET 7 look like? Can you just upgrade, or is there particular dependencies that require a specific .NET? I'm actually the Strawberry Shake version that I'm using right now was created for .NET 6, so I haven't had to make any changes at all. The package still works with .NET 7. The only hiccup is the actual Strawberry Shake command line tools to set up the config. So I had to use a preview version for that to run with .NET 7. From Brainiac, do you think GraphQL will gain more adoption in the .NET community in the next few years compared to its adoption and popularity in JS, it seems to be rather small right now. I hope so. Chili Cream and Michael Stabe have done a lot of great work with their packages, and they've made it very developer friendly to work with. But we'll see. What were the main challenges you encountered when you were learning how to work with GraphQL and Blazor for the first time? I would say the biggest challenge is the fact that there's less documentation out there and resources compared to REST, and that's due to the fact that there's not that high of a adoption rate within the .NET community right now. Do you agree with Michael's view that GraphQL shouldn't be built into ASP.NET Core, but rather being kept as OSS? I actually completely agree with that. It's better for the community in general, I think, for packages to stay separate from the standard library, especially for things that fit more of a niche like this. I actually, yeah, I won't get into it, but that's just a personal opinion. Question: does OData still have a place with GraphQL being widely adopted by now? Yes, it does, but that's what Tableau is for. Next question: what are the flavors of Blazor you would recommend, and for what use cases? So for Blazor WebAssembly, I would say that its main use case would be for enterprise and internal applications that aren't public facing. If it is public facing, I would use it for something like a code editor or anything where you're not looking particularly for like individual page-based search engine optimization, just because it is a single page application. And then for the Blazor server side of it, Blazor server is useful if you want to quickly build out an application that has a backend and a front end without separating them into separate projects with a lot of client-side logic that you don't want to go to the hassle of using JavaScript for, but also won't have an insanely high user load because you do have that real-time connection where, like, if you click a button in the browser, it has to go to the backend to change something on your screen on your front end. So you do have that ping time delay there. Next question from Brainiac again. Is there a feature right now you missed in your work with GraphQL? There's a lot of GraphQL features themselves that I didn't cover today, such as pagination. So that's a real-time query where you're pulling only part of your results and then the next part of your results and then the next part of your results without running that all at once. And then same with subscriptions. That's another real-time feature of GraphQL. So like if you're listening for a new DM, direct message from a user in a chat or something, you could do that with subscriptions or announcements or stock price updates, things like that. Do you have any tips on how to make GraphQL tooling easier? I use Strawberry Shake in a project right now, and Visual Studio is not taking all the generated code very lightly. So Rider works fairly well with it right now. It had issues with it in the past, but I've seen people saying that the latest EAP of Rider also is having issues with the generated code. So um, your mileage may vary. Yeah, and thanks everyone. I'll post those links to the source code in the chat. And have a good Thanksgiving if you're in the States.